Two Zionists were killed in the USA by a man called Elias Rodriguez in Washington, D.C., and war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu is quick to link the act to the criticism by UK, France, and Canada for his terrorist act against Palestinians in Gaza. This is a game this bloodthirsty terrorist has always played very effectively all his life. Justify his war crimes and face no consequences by playing the anti Semitism card. But more and more members of the Western media outlets who earlier played along with his dirty game are now calling out his nefarious motive. But let's listen to this terrorist who should have been arrested a long time ago and be languishing in jail for the rest of his life.
Last night in Washington, something horrific happened. A brutal terrorist shot in cold blood a young, beautiful couple, Yaron Lishinsky and Sarah Milgram. Yaron had just bought an engagement ring for Sarah. He was planning to give it to her in Jerusalem next week. They were planning to start a new and happy life together. Well, that tragically did not happen. Yaron and Sarah weren't the victims of a random crime. The terrorist who cruelly gunned them down did so for one reason and one reason alone. He wanted to kill Jews. And as he was taken away, he chanted, "Free Palestine." This is exactly the same chant we heard on October 7th. On that day, thousands of terrorists stormed into Israel from Gaza. They beheaded men, they raped women, they burned babies alive, they butchered 1,200 innocent people and took 251 innocent people hostage to the dungeons of Gaza. A short time afterwards, Chancellor Scholz of Germany visited Israel. And after he saw the horrors, he said to me, "These Hamas terrorists are exactly like the Nazis." He was right. And if they could get away with it, these Hamas terrorists would have slaughtered every last Jew on earth. For these neo-Nazis, Free Palestine is just today's version of Heil Hitler. They don't want a Palestinian state. They want to destroy the Jewish state. They want to annihilate the Jewish people who've been in the land of Israel for 3,500 years. I could never understand how this simple truth evades the leaders of France, Britain, Canada, and others. They're now proposing to establish a Palestinian state and reward these murderers with the ultimate prize.
So, what he is effectively telling the UK, France, and Canada is this: how dare you not let me kill more children and babies by dropping bombs on their tents? How dare you not let me starve men, women, children, and babies to death? How dare you not let my medieval gang kill children and babies for fun? How dare you not let me steal more Palestinian land and justify our credential as thieves as well as being barbaric monsters? That's his pain. You allow this genocidal maniac to indulge in all these unspeakable crimes, and you are siding with humanity. That's the definition of humanity for this sociopath. But it is refreshing to see more and more members of the Western media outlets coming out in the open to emphatically call out his dirty game. This is Alex Rossi, Sky News' international correspondent, who too now acknowledges the growing international pariah status for the settler colony.
Definitely on the front foot, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, a blistering, excoriating attack on what really are traditional allies of Israel. But remember, there is a context to all of this. As well as the war in Gaza, there is a propaganda war going on, and Israel is becoming increasingly diplomatically isolated. What Benjamin Netanyahu appears to be trying to do is reframe the narrative and also deflect by linking criticism from Western governments, Keir Starmer, Mark Carney and Emmanuel Macron of France, linking that to the murders that took place in Washington, reframing the narrative by effectively saying that criticism of Israel ends up siding with Israel's enemies. If you criticize Israel, you are empowering organizations like Hamas, which are avowedly trying to destroy the Jewish state. But I think the singular thing to take away from all of this is that the diplomatic rift over Gaza is deepening. It is getting worse tonight, not better.
For long, Netanyahu and his gang members blackmailed journalists and members of academia by throttling their right to free speech by playing the anti-Semitism card. But the Gaza conflict is making the world realize that enough is enough. You can't be using the anti-Semitism card to shield your despicable crimes. This is what all thieves, criminals, and terrorists do, but not anymore. Veteran journalist and BBC's international editor Jeremy Bowen too exposed the game plan of the terrorist who is currently wanted by the International Criminal Court for war crimes.
Because what he's trying to do is associate very strongly criticism of Israel and the way it conducts the war in Gaza with anti-Semitism, essentially trying to make it the same thing. And now, of course, there are plenty of people who say it's okay to criticize what Israel does, and you can do it without being anti-Semitic. But, you know, I've got an example here, and he specifically referred to comments. Actually, he associated those the leader's comments with that dreadful murder of two Israelis in Washington. But more directly, he referred to the UN humanitarian chief, Tom Fletcher, who said somewhat controversially on the BBC that 14,000 Palestinian babies were at imminent risk of death. And his phrase was, look, the press, this is Netanyahu, the press believes it, the mob believed it, and a young couple is brutally gunned down in Washington. The Israeli Minister of Foreign Affairs said on social media, in Washington, words became bullets. So that is very much the narrative coming from their side. You criticize Israel, you are anti-Semitic.
And not to forget Piers Morgan, arguably the biggest supporter of Israel's genocidal campaign in Gaza during the ongoing conflict. But even he has changed his tone. See his combative response to a supporter of the Israeli rogue regime.
People that have entered Gaza to visit Gaza.
But here's the key point, Doran. International journalists have not been allowed into Gaza to independently verify any of this. That's been another massive problem I've had with this. If Israel has nothing to hide, they should let
Pierce,
all
have
the...
you ever been in Gaza?
Hang on, let me finish.
Pierce.
Hang on. Let me finish my question. Let me finish my question.
Have you you had 20 years to go to Gaza?
Let me finish my question, please.
What happened on October 7th that all of a sudden you want to walk
Doran,
into a war
I'm going to finish
zone
my question whether you let me or not, okay? And my question is this. If Israel has nothing to hide, why are they not letting international journalists go in? Tell me. Why don't they let them all in so that what you're telling us can actually be independently verified?
Pierce, Israel is trying to deal with a terrorist regime that is popping out of tunnels, popping out of buildings, is everywhere. And you want us to unleash a flood of reporters into the area when a Hamas reporter was killed because he was Hamas. The entire world media blamed Israel for killing a reporter, and he was a member of Hamas, a verified member of Hamas that filmed himself as part of October 7th. So you want us to unleash 1,000 reporters?
You're not banning the international media out of concern for their safety.
One second, Pierce.
Don't insult my intelligence,
You asked me about
Don't insult my intelligence.
You're asking me questions while I'm speaking.
Don't insult my intelligence. Israel is not banning international media
I'm just trying to provide an answer, Pierce. I don't feel like I have an opportunity to actually answer you.
You're not banning us out of concern for our safety. You're banning us because you don't want the international media to witness what you're doing on the ground for reasons that I don't know. But the best way to remove any suspicion about what you're doing is to let the international media in. They will make their own risk assessment. It will be down to their security teams, as it is in any war zone. But the idea that somehow Gaza should be the only war zone in the world where you don't let international journalists go and operate and do their job, and you can do that, Israel, because you basically control all the access to Gaza, I'm afraid is for the birds. You should just let the media in. Then everything you're saying can be verified as true or untrue. And the fact that Israel won't allow it is sticking in my gullet. And when it's pretended to be out of some quaint concern for my personal safety, I'm afraid it's laughable.
Who would have expected this response from Piers Morgan? Even BBC's Vera Davies, whose reporting from Gaza always includes a standard caveat how Hamas had killed 1,200 Israelis, but 53,000 slaughtered by Israelis were according to Hamas-run health ministry. Even he now says Israel has been backed into a corner by its staunchest allies.
The United Kingdom, France and Canada, who Mr Netanyahu grouped together, have been robust in recent days about their criticism of Israel's decision to expand the war in Gaza and the impact of the war and, of course, the lack of food and medical equipment on the humanitarian situation in Gaza. And that line that Mr Netanyahu used there, do not be on the wrong side of history, that was echoing the British Foreign Secretary David Lammy when he criticised Israel quite strongly in the House of Commons earlier this week and used that phrase, warning to Israel not to be on the wrong side of history. So yes, three of Israel's traditional allies, the French, the British and the Canadians, coming under strong criticism from the Israeli Prime Minister. But Israel has been backed into a corner by many of its international allies because and Israel risks, I think, becoming increasingly isolated internationally. There's been criticism too from the US, perhaps not in the same words, but the Americans, the President Donald Trump and Foreign Secretary Marco Rubio have both in recent days expressed concern, certainly about the humanitarian situation in Gaza. So that perhaps is what preempted Mr Netanyahu's extraordinary words. We've had a response from the French, a French government spokesperson, Sophie Primas, said, "We do not accept the accusation," and added that President Macron's response was very firm. So yes, some pretty tense relations between the Israelis and some of their traditional allies.
So it's time Netanyahu realized that his time was up. It would be in his interest to surrender himself to the ICC and face the consequences for his war crimes if he doesn't want the settler colony of Israel, built on the stolen land of Palestinians, to face more international isolation. Have you noticed that he's no longer talking about the hostages? It was never his intention to free hostages. His only goal was to slaughter Palestinians and steal more of their land. He will go down in history as the most brutal terrorist of all time. Thank you very much for your support of this platform and our journalism on buymeacoffee.com and Patreon. If you too think that our journalism is worth supporting, then you too should consider becoming part of it. Details are there in the description of this video. In the meantime, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so, because that's one of the many ways you can support independent journalism. God bless you all.